Welcome to video number 7 of my 1936 Studebaker truck build. I've had a big rethink over the last couple of months in regards to the way I'm actually going to build the truck. The problem I had, or that was starting to develop, was now that everything is sitting on a rideable chassis, it was going to sit too high, and my only option was either to buy a set of drop spindles for the front, which are hugely expensive here in Australia, looking at nearly $1,000 for a set of drop spindles, or what I could do is leave the suspension at its original factory ride height and channel the thing. So that's what I've decided to do. It'll cost me nothing more than a couple of grinder discs and a little bit of time, and it should come up good. I initially wanted to channel it by 80mm. Unfortunately, after having done all my measurements, and the best I'm going to be able to do it is 65mm. And one of the issues that I had was this front cross member here. The issue I've got is that the guard and the radiator shroud both sit on this front section of the chassis, and because the front's squared out and it almost changes to a right angle there, this section of the chassis was going to be a hindrance. I couldn't drop it down. So what I've done is, on this side, I've lopped it off, and I've had to notch the guard here a little bit to get enough clearance, but that's allowed me to drop that entire guard down 65mm, which is great. And you'll see from the side, when I get this torch, I'll fire it up, you can see there on the guard bracket how far it sits below the chassis now. I'm actually using the top 2 holes in that bracket as the bottom 2 holes now. So that's dropped significantly, and there's a huge difference just even visually at this point in time. If you can see the difference in the headlights, that's huge. One of the things I'm going to have to do also is, of this panel here, I'm going to have to trim that back about 65mm and cut that straight across, and refold the lip on it. It's unbolted, and it won't be a big job. It's a very easy job, probably the easiest out of the lot. You can get a bit of an idea there how much that's dropped from that piece of wood that I'm using as a running board, as a guide for a running board, and the bottom of the guard. That does have to come up a little bit of sag in it, but it's pretty good. You can see there from the bottom of the cabin down to the guard how much that's dropped, and my gap now between top of my tyre and the bottom of my guard has reduced dramatically. So when I end up running a set of sports truck radials on this, which are going to be a lot higher than these 65 series Dunlops that I got on this now, that's going to fill that right out. That's going to look absolutely magnificent. One of the other jobs I've got to do is, obviously because the guards drop, the radiator shroud has to drop, which means the radiator has to drop. So these brackets here which I welded in about 6 months ago for the radiator. What I've got to do now is grind these off and swap them over, but run them upside down. And it just happens that the distance between there and there happens to be 65 millimeters. Complete fluke. Didn't plan it like that, but it's going to be perfect. So yeah, I'll just flip them over, swap sides, and weld them back in, and my radiator will be sitting at the correct height to fit under the shroud, the radiator shroud. One of the other things I've got to do, and I'm absolutely shitting myself about it, is I've got to cut the radiator shroud. Now, from my measurements, and from what I can work out, I've got to take 65 millimeters out of here. You can see the scored line there, and then I've got to run down that very edge, very much like what I did with the guard here. I've got to run down that edge there. Once I do that, that gives me clearance in the sheet metal, but then we have an issue with the actual mounting brace. So I'm going to have to grind the rivets, the original factory rivets, out of the side there. Hang on a second, I'll just lay this over, make it easier. So yeah, I'll have to grind those factory rivets out, measure down from here, take 65 millimeters off, and move everything up 65 millimeters. These brackets here, they're only tacked in, probably a bit overkill there, but these are for the air conditioning condenser. So I'm quite lucky that they won't have to be ground off and moved up, because when all of this bracket gets moved up, they'll get moved up as well. So let me set that up. So that's the bottom of the ruler there, is 65 millimeters from the end of that bracket. So that's how much I've got to take off, and then just move everything up 65 mil, and that should all work out fine. One of the other issues that I thought I might end up having is issues with my steering column. I finally got all my steering linkage in. It all works. Everything turns. But with dropping the cabin 65 millimeters and leaving the steering column bolted to the floor where it is now, that would come down and end up hitting my exhaust manifold. So what I'm going to do, I can't get in at the moment because I've got the door clamped in place, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mount this plate, this base plate, just up a bit more, and just basically move the whole thing up. As the cabin comes down, the steering column base will go up. It'll alter the angle of my steering column slightly. It'll rotate it that way more, so it'll be more face on. It'll still have a nice slope in it, angle, whatever you would like to refer to it as. And but yeah, I'm probably looking at the wheel coming out to about here by doing that rotation. So 65 millimeters out from there is where the face of the steering wheel will sit. Besides that, there's not a lot that I need to do after that. Obviously these brackets here for the running boards will need to be dropped down. Again, 65mm. That's nothing. There's enough holes there. I don't have to re-drill any holes in the actual bracket. It'll just be a matter of drilling a hole through the chassis and sticking the bolts back in. So that's easy enough. I think it was the best way to go, to be honest. Yeah, drop spindle's real easy, you know, half an hour, they're bolted up, but $1,000. And it's still not going to guarantee me that 2 inches is going to be enough. 2 inches is only 50mm, and by doing what I'm doing, I'm getting 65mm and still retaining my full suspension travel. So I think this is the right way to do it. By dropping everything, I've still got clearance here. Just getting back onto an older subject from some of the early videos, I was playing around with this air conditioning compressor. This was off a Ford Festiva, or a Kia as it's sold in some countries. You know, it's all homemade bracket and everything like that. The problem is it's a grooved belt on the compressor and the idler pulley here, but I'm running V-belt on all the other components, so I'm probably going to have to do away with this entire thing, which doesn't particularly bother me because I pulled it off something I wrecked and it didn't cost me anything. So, you know, if I got to get rid of that, I got to get rid of that. But it still worked out good anyway. You know I can get a compressor in there, even though this one isn't going to work for me. I thought about trying to suss a V-groove pulley for the front here, but I don't know how you go about doing it with all this clutch mechanism and everything on there. So it's probably just easy to buy one that's going to work. I think the brand or this company, I think called Sandon, that do the compressors. I've seen some reasonably priced ones on eBay, just over the $200 mark. So, you know, I might pick up one of those and just run a Sandon one in here. We'll get a better look at this power steering bracket too. I think in one of the last videos I might have spoke about it. I was having issues with the return line pipe, and I had a later model one, which this is, which had the return line pipe at the right angle. The only problem was I needed to press the pulley off because the belt that ran on the original pulley for this pump was a lot narrower than this one, and I needed to run this one because we've got the wider belts on all the rest of the pulleys, the water pump, the crankshaft, and alternator. So I needed to keep the same size belt, or I wanted to keep the same size belt. So yeah, I've pressed that off. That's just sitting on there at the moment. Had to modify the bracket slightly because this pump was originally set up to be run on a 6-cylinder on this side of the motor, and because we're tilting it the opposite way now, I've had to notch this original bracket out. I know it doesn't look $1 million, but as I said, this is a daily driver, it's a budget build. I'm not really bothered when it's all painted up and I clean all these corners up, and everything will look really pretty. You know, it'll be no different than a factory bracket. But yeah, that's all pulled in now. That's, you know, as I said, that was originally bolted in here, now it's bolted in here. I've modified an alternator bracket as the adjuster bracket, and that works fine because I don't have enough room anywhere else to really run a bracket. I could maybe run something off here to here, but this just seemed to work right. It was the right angle, the right length, so I'm gonna just gonna leave that. I'm really not particularly fussed. As I said, you know, once it's everything's painted up and all cleaned up, painted up, it's going to look magnificent. So yeah, so that's another little job I got done recently. I've got to ditch this fuel pump and put the block off plate on it, because it'll be running on straight LPG. I'm just trying to source a straight gas carburetor for it now on eBay. I've got the I've got a 4-barrel intake manifold to go on here, so this carby and this manifold can get put on eBay, and might get something for it. Yeah, so that's where we're at the moment. Okay, a couple of other things that I've ended up sourcing on eBay of late is I ended up getting a pair of exhaust hangers. So now, rather than just using this old metal strapping off a old air conditioner, I've actually got a pair of these heavy duty 360-degree swivel exhaust mounts, or muffler mounts. I got them off eBay. They're brand new, but obviously the guy had bought them and didn't use them and had them sitting around for a long time, so I got them for I think $20 for the pair, which was great. What else? Oh, these I've had forever and a day. They're just a new set of boots for the rack and pinion. When I finally get around to pulling it all out and cleaning it all up and stuff, I got myself a second hand but a new ignition barrel. I bought an entire steering column, stripped it down, took what I needed off it, which was just this, the switch and barrel. Ended up selling the intermediate shaft off it, ended up selling the indicator mechanism. I paid $25 for the whole column, and I ended up making, I think, about $50 profit, and still got the ignition switch as well. So that was a really good deal, that one. The other thing that I bought too was a wiper setup. This is actually off a Triumph 2500. So to be early to mid 70s model. It's one of the cable type. So let's see if I can get this out. So all the cables got to be fed in through these gears here. They do make a Hotrod aftermarket one, which is really nice. Really the only difference is that the motor is a little more compact. Pretty much in the width of the body it's the same, but just the motor is a little bit smaller. So now I got the whole complete setup. So motor, the cable, the spindles and the bar. I got the bracket even to mount it if I wanted to use that. I got the wiper arms. I got the wiper arms and the blades, all for $100. And it works great. I've done a quick wire up job and it works brilliant. So you know, I'll be able to run this from the top, which is what I wanted to do. That'll obviously all go up inside there and run out through the top, rather than bringing it up through here, which is a real pain, because you've got to then get like wedge-shaped spaces to support the shaft when it comes up from underneath the dashboard. So with this I can just run that straight out through that bulkhead there. Sorry about the camera angle then, didn't realise what I was doing, but yeah, that's it'll all get put in there like that. So I picked up a couple of little bargains over the last couple of months. Yeah, all this will get put in once I take the cabin off the truck. You can see there, I originally marked this out for an 80mm notch, but that'll be a 65mm notch now. But it'll still be good. It'll be good. If it's too low, it's impractical. If it sits too high, it looks stupid. So I think, you know, I'm somewhere in between both. I'll have practicality, but it'll look good too. It'll look good too. These back on these wiper mechanism. You can still buy all brand new parts for this. You can order them straight out of the UK. They still make them. The arms, the blade holders, all the spindles, the motors, the cables. I think I see cables already, but yeah, you can buy all this stuff brand new, and it's not that expensive. That was one of the things I wanted to make sure of before I actually bought this, that if something broke, I could get replacement parts for it, and I can. So I'm happy about that. Okay, well, I've modified the radiator shroud. I've taken out that support bar. Should have filmed this as I was doing it, but you'll get the idea. There's quite a few spot welds there. I ground the heads off the rivets, used a small drill just to countersink the holes, then used a larger drill and drilled the heads off the rivets. And I'll just take this out and show you what I've done. Okay, let me see, I'm going to get the right side here. So, that one. Okay, let's have a look. Basically, that's what I've done. I took the 65mm out of there and followed the shape of that little apron that runs down the side of the shroud, and that's given me enough to be able to sit down over that crossmember. So that's all. It's all looking good now.